Hi, welcome to Brady's Blunders, where I show you the mistakes from my games so you don't make the same ones in yours. This is my sixth and final game of the 2015 US Open, and I am playing against another strong young fighter named Che Mung. Sorry for my pronunciation. At any rate, he's very good, and I think his rank is going to continue to go up for some time. And like almost everyone else I played, he had a good Congress. His record was 5-1 at the U.S. Open. So what I'm going to do is start with the problem where I went wrong and ask where you would play. I'll show the continuation, and then I'm going to rewind to earlier in the game to show how we got there and how I could have avoided it. All right. So here's the situation in the game. Black has just played D, so we're in a fight on the right side and the center. And it's my turn. So if you were white, where would you play? Feel free to pause and think about it as long as you like. Okay, I moved out here, which was totally wrong. And he thought for some time and extended. He could have been more severe. But then I came here thinking I was about to crush A. I was quite happy. And then he played here, and my happiness turned to despair as I quickly realized I was going to lose this capturing race. I then compounded my error. I'd already made one blunder. I then compounded it with another. This is really bad because of the liberty it costs me. I played this, connecting this group to this corner, and then he played down here. Right, so let me rewind the game and talk about how we got there. This is the situation much earlier. So black has just completed a double wing formation, and I jumped in. I certainly had other options, but this is playable. And he set out to make sure I couldn't gain ice space. And I set out to make a light shape running towards the center. And this was acceptable from both sides. When I came here, he capped, and I decided that this wasn't a reasonable play. I didn't like the relationship between this stone and this stone. They're really not connected, and this stone is also far from here. So I thought I had the opportunity to counterattack. The natural move when these stones have this relationship is just to split them, to come out in between. But I didn't particularly like the position after this. As I just mentioned, I felt that A was an overplay, that I should be able to attack, but here I am strengthening it. Also, he's developing power towards the right-hand side. And finally, my group, I feel like, is pathetic and doing very little other than running away. However, he started with 4 stones to my 1 in the upper left-hand corner. So I should expect to take a little bit of a drubbing and have to run away. And this is actually an acceptable result for white. But I didn't like it. I would encourage you not to play submissively in a situation like this and think, well, all I have to do is live. So let me make some eyes. Because black is going to say, okay, fine, I'll let you live in there, but get all kinds of forcing moves on the outside. White's already played 7 moves and is going to have to play quite a few more. So, let's call it 10 or 15 moves just to grab 6 or 7 points in the center. And let's assume it lives. Playing 15 moves to grab 6 or 7 points is incredibly inefficient. Meanwhile, black's been able to add stones to the outside that are either taking territory or building thickness and power towards the outside. So in a situation like this, don't just try to live locally and small. It's much better to fight your way out. And that was the purpose of my move. It looks very similar, but the intention is completely different. What I'm trying to do is separate this stone from his friends on the left. Black made a couple moves that are somewhat dubious in that he's trying to hollow out my eye space, but I don't really have any interest in the eyes that are there because I want to fight my way out. And actually, these stones have just strengthened me towards the outside, which is what I wanted anyway. When Black played this, I was a little frustrated that I didn't play there earlier, but I thought the game was still quite okay, and I cut across his knight's move. And then he played here, and I actually had an easier way to continue than what I chose. I had the ability to cross-cut, and when he eats the stone, just connect out. So now my group that was running is now taking territory at the top and is connected to my upper right corner. This is a perfectly acceptable result and a decent game. What I didn't like about it is I felt that Black had overplayed earlier and was thin, and now he's thick. So I didn't think this was a terribly good result. And again, that judgment was wrong. So instead, I went all in and said, let's fight. And he accepted. Now what I was thinking is that, fine, I have a weak group and he is a weak group, but I have friends outside. So as we fight and run, we're going to run into my friends, not his friends. So I thought the fight was good for me. This next move is not the best because actually Black has a problem in his shape, and this encourages him to fix it. So it's better for me to push on one side if I want to attack that defect. And one wants to do it, one wants to read the continuations before playing it, because what I'm about to show you doesn't quite work. But if I play here and he plays here, this is the defect that I'm referring to. I can throw a stone in and then give it right back, trying to create a shortage of liberty situation. Now, if I push here and he is kind enough to connect, this is a really powerful move. Black can't connect because I will capture his group in a ladder. So instead, Black has to capture the white stones in a ladder, giving me the panuki in the center. With this result, White's quite happy. His group that was under attack is now safe. It's got a panuki in the center that's going to help the bottom grow. And these two black stones look kind of ridiculous, just stuck there. So it's a reasonable game so far for White. It's far from over, but it's pretty good. Of course, Black won't play here. Black will play here, and then the nice sequence that I showed doesn't quite work. Oh, so it was close, but it doesn't quite work. So what can we do differently when we're in the reading stage? Well, maybe even before doing the attack to this side, White can play an asking move. Everybody I know will block, and I will wager everyone you know will block right here in this situation. They're not going to play passively and pull back like this. So if you do that and they block, now all of a sudden the sequence that I showed earlier works, and we get the same result. So this is good for White. White's happy. This would have been great. I wish I'd played this way, but I didn't see it. And instead, I helped Black fix his shape. It's not the end of the world. It's just not the best. I came out here to put maximum pressure on Black, and he replied doing exactly the same to me. And this is where we come up to the situation in the game. So when I moved out, my teacher said, "But Brady, what about these 4 stones? I mean, don't you just have a feeling they're in trouble? You know, some sort of sense? Can you feel it?" And I was very amused, and I thought, wow, so the secret to being a pro is to have a superpower. It's to have the superpower of spider sense, that you can sense danger, feel a tingle in the back of your head. And I was kind of amused by it. But I actually think it's somewhat true. but it's a trainable superpower, and it's one that comes with experience. So the more games you play and the more fights you get in, the better feeling you will get for when your groups are in danger. The reality was, no, my spider sense failed me, and I didn't realize that A was in trouble, but I sure as heck knew that B was in trouble. One step from a net. Nevertheless, if I'd followed the process that I talked about earlier for how to think in a fight, I should have been fine. It's something like this, that there's 5 weak groups. I've got A and B, and they're both weak. And he's got C, D, and E that are all weak. And so how does one think about it? Well, the first question one should ask is, can I capture my opponent's cutting stones? For sure. I mean, do I have a sequence that just plain works and I'm going to capture them? And if you do it, and you've just won the fight, and it's over. Right. Well, when I look at this board, I don't see that. So the answer is no. If the answer is no or don't know, then you move on to the second question. And that question is, can I save both of my groups, both of my sets of cutting stones? Well, as we saw in the continuation, the answer was no. And my answer, as I looked at the board, should have been, I don't know for sure. And then the next question to ask is, which of my cutting stones or cutting groups are more important? Well, B is very important. It's splitting 2 groups, so that's quite important. But A is even more important because it's splitting 3 groups. So I've identified which one's more important, and I need to help it. What's the best move to help A? Well, this move is really cool. Number 1, it moves out, which is good. Number 2, it adds liberties, which is good. And number 3, it aims for a defect at A in Black's position. Well, if Black goes ahead and says, cool, you didn't protect that stone, now I'm going to capture it, Black's in deep trouble because White can push out here. If Black goes ahead and defends, now White can cut across here, and A and B are Mie, and Black is dead. So this is a great result for White. Therefore, Black won't play that. Let's say Black decides to move out this way. Well, this is still going to be good for White because he will cut, and the situation will be something like this. At this point, the game is nearly over because Black has no eyes, no room to make eyes, and nowhere to run that isn't running into White's stones. So this is a good game for White. So what does that mean? That means Black cannot capture that stone. Okay. So if Black goes ahead and protects that cut like this, or maybe a little bit more fancy like this, it's not putting a lot of pressure on these stones. So we've gained the liberties, we're further out, we're okay, and now have the ability to go ahead and fight. And whatever continuations occur, it's looking very promising for White. So the game is pretty good. Well, does Black have a more severe move? Well, this move looks more severe. It protects against this cut and is putting pressure on the black stones. So on the white stones, sorry. So at this point, I have to ask myself the same questions. Can I capture black cutting stones in a sequence that I can understand and is definitely going to work? No, I don't see that yet. Okay, can I save both of my groups of stones? Well, this is out further than it was before, and maybe it's okay, but I'm not really certain that if I tanuki here, I'm going to be okay. So so the answer to that is no. So then the third question, which of my groups are more important? Save that one. Okay, this is still more important, so let's save that one. Okay, so now black comes back and finally eats the single stone and is happy. Well, except it still doesn't quite work for black. White can still aim at the same defect. black connects, and then white threatens to come out, splitting black's center group. If black tries to connect back, white can play here. If black tries to split that off, then you have this killer combination, and black is dead in the center. And the game is great for white. Okay, so this doesn't quite work. So reaching out doesn't quite work. How about just connecting here? Well, this is pretty dismal for black too, because white can just play here. Now white has managed to cut his way out into the center, and A is just a silly looking string with no eyes, and again, nowhere to run that doesn't already have white stones. All right, so perhaps this move was bad, and maybe black just needs to help himself that way. But still, this is a shape that white is perfectly happy with. White is cutting his way out again, and black is going to have to try to live in a narrow space. It's similar to the previous one. All of these are good for white. So what does that mean? Well, again, it means black does not have time to capture A and needs to help his stones. Okay, but now my group has more liberties than it did before and has moved out, and I'm in great position to continue this fight. The game should be good for white. Alas, I didn't do that, and I didn't help the correct group. I helped this group because I could see that it urgently needed it, and it went very poorly. Let me explain again why this move was so bad. If I don't play this move, and instead I play this move, it's sente. If black goes ahead and tanukis, and I cut here, this group only has 2 liberties, and white has 3, so white has suddenly won this race. So black can't tanuki. Black needs to connect. But now I can play here, accomplishing my mission of connecting these stones to this corner, and guess what? It's sente, because black can't tanuki because, again, white kills black. So black needs to come back and kill these white stones. And now white gets to play a big move somewhere else on the board, maybe the same spot that black wanted to himself. This has to be worth 20 or 30 points. And that's why this move was so bad, because it took away our liberty. And now when I played this, it was no longer sente. Black could do this and still win this fight. Well, that's it. This is my last game of the US Open, and I didn't play badly. Matter of fact, my opponent told me this was his hardest game that he had to play, so that was kind of cool. But making the blunder and then following it up with a second blunder was just too much, and I fought back as hard as I could, but I wasn't able to catch up. In my next video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Go Congress. I'll show a few more variations that came up after I filmed previous videos, and I'll talk a little bit about what I'm going to do to stop making so many blunders. Thanks for watching. See you next time.